We have our next itinerary schedule, that is panel discussion 2 on the topic HR leadership in the age of digital transformation, strategies and best practices for success. I would like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Sanchayan Paul, CHRO, Modenik Lifestyle Private Limited. Mr. Sanchayan Paul is the Chief Human Resource Officer at a prominent Indian casual wear and Indian wear company. Combines experience in entrepreneurship, telecom, and global HR excellence. He co-founded karyamitra.com, worked at Vodafone India, and collaborated with renowned companies like Reuters, PwC, and Reliance Industries. He holds an MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur and is a certified sales compensation professional. Now, I would love to introduce the panelists. Our first panelist, Dr. H.C. Guruvayurappan, PV, CHRO Omega Healthcare. Mr. Uday Vora, Head Solution Consulting India, UKG. Mr. Venkat Vishwanath, CHRO, Roche Products India. Mr. Sachin Khurana, Chief People Officer and Vice President, People Practice, Happiest Minds Technologies. And last and not the least, Dr. S. Naga Siddhartha, Chief Human Resources Officer, UrbanPiper. Can we please welcome the moderator and the panelists with a round of applause?
Wonderful. I think after a series of presentations, a warm welcome to this panel. I am Sanchayan and I think the team has introduced all the speakers. So welcome to all of you. On this panel, interesting set of subject, and we were just discussing a very interesting set of questions. Towards the end, we'll also try to open it up for audience to have their comments and ask questions to us as well. Transformation, as you know, is all about people, right? And we as HR folks over these years have driven various kinds of transformation, not necessarily digital. Mergers and acquisitions, cultural transformations, technology changes in factories, changes in regulations, etc. So HR folks over this period of time, and then specifically during COVID, have become experts in driving change and transformation. So what better than to hear from a set of very distinguished CHROs who are my co-panelists today. The other piece which is very important is a transformation is like a movement, and any movement, unless you make it a people's movement, doesn't really succeed, and your chances of success really goes up if you make it a people's movement. So without much ado, let me kind of start with my set of questions, and panelists, you may choose to add on, modify, so on. Let's keep it free flowing. The first one is to Guru. So Guru, if you could tell us about the role of HR leadership and how it has evolved in the context of digital transformation, and what are the key challenges that HR leaders face today? Guru.
Okay. So the HR, leaders and the challenges in between, you also how that we evolved, right? Okay. So my experience, is almost about 3+ decades in HR. So I had an opportunity to see pre-globalization, that LPG world, late 80s. Then we have seen the HR evolving till about 90s, and then mid 90s onwards, a different evolution, and recent past. So if I look at, two things happened in the last 3 decades. Prior to that, I don't want to get in. The HR leader role itself has evolved. And before I get into HR, probably I need to also talk about how the organizations have evolved. See, any organization 2-3 decades back, we used to talk about hierarchy, based organizations. And today we are all talking about the network organization, collaboration, etc. 2 decades back, the technology used to drive people, and people are driving technology today. And we used to have innovation council in a function, in a department, in a company, and they only are privileged to innovate something. But today, everybody are innovating, and there is no innovation council. People are given the open mind, openness. So when that happened, HR always used to be in the back seat. 3 decades back, 2 decades back, when I look at it, all that we were asked is the database requirement, and we have to be on time preparing the payroll inputs. Finance used to be the custodian of payroll. And those days, the need was, how do we automate the technology relation? So finance used to drive HR guys to do for few things, and we never even in the front seat to take any kind of technology adoption. And those have changed over a period of, maybe mid-90s. One step ahead, it is not only the database, it is not only the payroll requirement. There were enough and more isolated HR functions started getting automated, performance management or recruitment, etc. So we were talking about HCM, and those HCM, multiple companies have come back and then started showcasing, and HR was actually struggling to visualize the end outcome of those technologies those days. And it used to be, so one of the challenges, I'm just clubbing it here, is HR were not competent enough to look at what were really the outcome. So they thought that this is something is my responsibility, okay, who can switch on, switch off the computer will be called to use the HCM. But the evolution has, last 15 years is completely different. We were talking about, from an operational HR to a strategic HR, we are talking about how HR is not only a business partner, but also is the business owner and business driver in the organization, which has created the need and the opportunity. If we are not transforming our function and being a business driver, we may not have an opportunity to be in the organization. That has helped us to look at integrated HR systems. So from a point solutions to an integrated HR system was the third revolution that we have seen. From a data requirement, we moved into a point system, and to the integrated, how an HR, hiring from an ATS, you will be able to see that somebody's contribution to the billing and then gross margin of the organization. So the evolution, if you look at it, we have seen HR function itself has evolved over a period of last 3 decades. Pre-globalization, during globalization, and the last decade on the digital disruption. Yeah, I'm not getting into the AI, etc. Organizations also evolved. And startups ecosystem has changed the whole expectation. And today, there is only one challenge that HR people have to look at it. They should be courageous enough to look at digital than outsource that particular activity, because this is very important. If you want to be in HR, you take the first step in seeing that how you can contribute, then outsource that activity to somebody who is digitally qualified. At the end of the day, the technology is to help people and not the people to help the technology. I think that is something which I think in my experience I have seen. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, Guru. I think great points. The entire evolution of HR from being an administrator to partner to owner to driver, looking at systems in silos to an integrated system that runs across the business, outcome-based innovation is for everybody and not for specific innovation department, and the need for HR to be courageous. I think wonderful points, Guru. Let me move on to Venkat. Venkat, I think it will be great if the audience gets to know a set of or couple of successful digital transformation initiatives that has been in the HR function or led by the HR function? What were the strategies that contributed to the success that you would have seen or heard or you would have done in your own organization itself? Venkat.
Sure. Thank you, Sanchayan. And Dr. Guru, I mean, I would actually like to continue something which Dr. Guru said, okay, is primarily, don't fear the technology, use as much as possible, okay, do not try to outsource the usage of digital tools. I will actually quote an anecdote or an experience, in that particular context. I think we also need to limit it. Okay. I'm a soft-spoken guy. Yeah. I'm audible, by the way?
Yeah.
To the last lady there. Excellent. Yeah. So what I'm saying is we also need to limit it. And I'm actually speaking out of experience. Recently we run a org, how do I say, the climate survey or the engagement survey or the global engagement survey, etc. And then you have the action planning, right? Okay, which is typically, I think in the previous session, someone was talking about it. Okay. And, oh, you know what, I mean, the employee experience can actually improve. Let's actually do the action planning. And to my surprise, a couple of days later, I noticed a communication coming in saying, kindly do not use ChatGPT for action planning. Right? Start thinking, start talking to people. Okay. So it's not a medium which is basically replacing our ability to interact with the rest of the people, but it is actually a medium where we can engage better. Okay. By moving away from, what are the transactional things that can actually take a lot of our mind share to create that particular bandwidth for us to actually do that engagement in the organization where HR becomes not just an enabler or a driver, but a business function as such. Okay. So I'll give a couple of examples. I think, Doctor, you spoke about 3 decades. Okay, I'll speak about last 4 years. Okay, the pre-COVID and post-COVID. Okay, we use digital immensely, quote unquote, assuming that video conferencing is a digital way. Other than that, we didn't use digital at all. Okay. How many of us have really gone into the systems and have actually seen it? I'm in my own experience when I actually look at the systems which have been used from a usage point of view, they've actually gone all-time low. The engagement through digital mode has actually increased. Instead of a phone call, I started doing a video call. Okay, I'm being a little critical about it. But if we go back a little, and in these last 3-4 years, I think the patience in our employees has also decreased because they want everything at a click of a button. If I actually start writing a strong SOP, okay, for 30 pages, no one is interested. If I have a work instruction pasted next to my work table, okay, and which is keep changing, okay, with a screen or something like that, what do I need to do next? The acceptance is immediate. So where does the role of HR come in? HR basically is, we've actually evolved from, you spoke about talent acquisition, centers of excellence. We've actually moved the transactional things into more digitized environment, the back offices, all of that stuff. Unless we as HR professionals take one step backwards, when someone reaches to us and say, you know what, if you do not know how to do it, I will help you to do it the first time. Second time, probably you should try it yourself, then I do it for you. Okay. And where does this begin? This begins at the leadership. Okay. I'll give you a simple example of one of my sites in close to Moradabad. There's a place called Gajrola. I don't know how many people actually know of this. Okay. A site, yes, Pradipta, you would. Okay. And when I went to the shop floor and I asked them, if you actually have to talk about, your benefits or something that, you need as information, what do you do? Just for me to get a pulse. The guy says, I will raise a ticket. Right? Excellent. I was super impressed. And I thought, it's basically an aberration. Let me ask 10 others. The answer is the same, and it was pretty consistent. Then I actually went back to my HR manager there in the site, who's been in the site for more than 26 years. And I said, how did you do that? I said, the choice is with the employee whether he wants to walk 300 meters to my office to know how to raise a ticket, or he can raise a ticket from the kiosk which is right next to him. Choices is. Okay. There is discipline. There is leadership commitment. There is discipline. There is conviction that, we will step back and then do something, which we are exclusively carved out to do. than do a transaction which everyone else can actually do. Okay. So that's a change. But it's the same change when it comes to Mumbai to the corporate office. It failed. Where the adoption is 90% in a site API facility, deep in the countryside, it was successful. In corporate, it failed. The reason is the leaders didn't want it to be told that you have to go and raise a ticket, but I actually want someone else to do it on my behalf. Okay. I think that's fundamentally are some of the examples that we talk about is basically the leadership commitment, the discipline, keeping the employee in the center, so that make the system in such a great way that it actually improves our experience. Because these are fundamental things, unless otherwise, the transformation wouldn't happen. And when we are doing this, the HR folks, there is an element of insecurity. Is technology going to take my job? Okay. I think as leaders, we need to provide that particular air cover. Okay. The moment I start talking about, I start evaluating on your own strategic business HR things immediately from what you've been doing, while the guy has a mindset, he will fail on the capabilities because he lacks confidence. Okay. Let's provide that air cover. So I will sum it that way, the entire transformation with some practical examples coming from the ground.
Sure. Thank you, Venkat. I think human-centric design and trying to see what the end recipient of the technology or transformation would finally feel, or how will they experience the whole thing. I think that's very important rather than trying to be very process-oriented or policy-oriented about it. Okay, we'll move on to Sachin. And Sachin, you could kind of tell us a bit about what are the emerging trends, technologies that HR leaders themselves should be aware of, and kind of how can they stay ahead. There's a lot of expectations from HR folks, right? Nowadays people are saying HR is leading the digitization and not the CIO, especially post-COVID. So how does one keep oneself updated and ahead of the curve?
Yeah, thanks. Interesting one. While Guru and Venkat has already set the context and talked about the challenges, especially from a digital world perspective, the human side of it as well. When you look at the emerging trends in HR, what you would have, if you would have Googled 10 years back, if you would have Googled 5 years back, and maybe next 5 years, you will find a similar answer. The key trends, the challenges remain the same. It's just the intrinsic, the complexity and the maturity has changed over time. We're talking about customer centricity, that means employee experience. We talk about use of technology, data-driven decision making. We look at well-being as some of the emerging themes. Will always be there. I think what is changing is every 2 years, there's this component of that area changes significantly. What would have worked for a well-being 2 years back, before COVID, during COVID, and now in a typical hybrid world has changed. But the trend is continue to be more member-centric. Now let's stay with the digital as a theme that we are here. While what as a technology 10 years back, we need to look more tools that can help our productivity, ticketing and responsiveness, use of data to make decisions. Now we're talking about Gen AI, data science, and it is an expectation that when we have the same expectation from the business, every time, I'm from Happiest Minds, an IT services company. We are saying we are a digital first company, born digital, born agile. That's what we stand for. That's what our business need to stand for. That's what my technology team need to stand for. And that means that's what my people practice team also have to stand for. So this is a question for everyone, just to see, everybody's awake here. How many of you have used one of the AI tool, at least played around with in the last few months? All of you? Assuming majority of them. How many of you have used these tools in the last 2 days? Yeah, the numbers have reduced. So here's the difference. While we are all eager to experiment, we know there's a technology, there's something that has come that can help me, but putting that thought into really daily life is a big shift. We are talking about building a habit. we're saying we need to exercise, all that. You go once, you take a cult membership and you pay it for the whole year and go it for 5 days. Then once in a month, or twice in a month, and at the next year, then again you renew. Same thing is on technology. I think there's so much happening. We go experiment, OpenAI, Google Bard, all that stuff. Once in a while, oh, we know, we've seen this is changing everything, but are we using daily? Why? And I tell you, this is how what we need to do is to move that experiment into our daily life, making the best of what we already have. There was this question in one of the forums that we were there last, and one of the large IT companies, they're having their own model, AI model, and they were able to do some analytics in terms of what was one common question that their technology people searched on this Gen AI model. The question was, and it is a people practice, the HR question, okay, that they were trying to get answer for. Answer was how to give a feedback to my team member without hurting him. How to give a negative feedback or a performance feedback without hurting him. This is so important. This is like our business, right? And we want all our people managers, the team members, to manage their team well. They are using technology. They are finding answers. How are we adopting that in technology? So I think the emerging thing remains same. So when we talk about technology, how we are using technology in creating a better well-being experience for our members. What worked for us 5 years back, 3 years back, from today, as Venkat was saying, instant gratification, everything people want right now. The same thing has to be created in HR function as well, in an employee experience. Can he get all his answer like here? When talking about well-being, are we really listening to him? We have this beautiful platform which is like a pulse or a happometer where somebody clicks, I am not happy, right? And within 4 hours, somebody reaches out to him. That's use of technology. There's a trigger happen that goes to people. But now you have to bring in the human element. After 4 hours, the chat bot is not reaching to him. There's a human reaching to him. That makes all the difference. We have this role by the name listening champion. It's a full-time role in the organization. The individual's role is only to be there for people. They're qualified, trained counselors who've been, there as a practice, been building their capability of being there with people. Use best of technology, make it a habit, but do not lose the human quotient. Whatever be the emerging trend will keep on changing, the technology, the wellness and data-driven. Please use and be on top of the emerging trend, but never lose your human part of your role, which is the core of your role.
Thank you, Sachin. I think so the message from Sachin is just don't think about it. Go ahead and use it, try it, experiment it. If you find it good, probably teach others, make people use it. And use technology for the betterment of your folks. How can their life become easier? How can they become more productive? So go ahead and use it rather than only probably reading about it or listening about it or wondering about it. And I think the second message, which is very beautiful, is the whole thing of having empathy. And that's going to be even more important as we become, the more the penetration of technology, more the need for empathy. And how do you kind of understand people and spend that time listening. So wonderful example, Sachin. Let me move on to Siddharth. Siddharth, I can call Siddharth, right? That's the right way to call you. Okay. So let's further deep dive now. I think we are moving from broader changes to more specific stuff. What skills and competencies do HR leaders need to thrive in this digital age? And why not only HR leaders, maybe all HR folks? And how can they develop and acquire these skills? Your thoughts, things that you've experienced, you've seen others do. Over to you, Siddharth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to organizers for having me here. Lots of friends in the audience. I think at least Ujjal, Alex, Shanti, Lata, Nandan, many more. And of course, panel members. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is better?
good.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that feedback. Right, we are finally in an HR. Yeah. So before I start, I have this huge countdown meter there right in front of my eyes, so I'll try and make this fast. Okay, so I'll start off with this thing. You did ask the audience, you invited them to tell, how many of you used ChatGPT or whatever else, right? Just a week ago, so we induct young HR blood, right? Just off the college, marks cards not yet come types, right? So, and then I called one of these kids and said, hey, she's a colleague, so I said, hey, why don't you kind of send out this mail on Slack or a message on this particular, some TT tournament, something. So she said, sure, and she brought something which was not very appealing. I said, why don't you go to the content writer there? The content writer will help you write stuff. And she brought one that was beautiful. I said, this is amazing. You should learn this from the content writer, right? Even I want to learn from this content writer. I mean, then she said, don't worry. She also didn't write it. I said, what do you mean? She said, ChatGPT. Okay. Now, this was amazing, right? Of course, that ChatGPT ka ek surgical, clinical feeling is there, right, on it. But it works. It's a nice Slack message with emoticons and all that. We had the TT tournament. Then after 2 days, she comes back and says, sir, some XYZ bank. For some reason, all banks are 4 letters. So one of these banks wants to, ABCD bank wants to run a desk. I said, sure, draft a message. I got a very exciting message. I've never seen any HR guy being so excited to, say there's a help desk coming. Then I said, listen, don't use ChatGPT for everything, right? So, it's kind of a helpful tool, but I think we all need to know what we're doing. This is a kind of a touchy topic, right? There's a lot more wisdom both off stage, on stage. So I'm not going to try and say, what are the skills and competencies. Instead, let me try and give a kind of a meta approach to this entire thing. Someone was asking me today morning over here over lunch, don't you find it difficult to jump across industries, right? I said, no. As long as there are human beings, I'm in business, right? So that's why I chose this profession. Which actually comes to this thing, what are the outcomes that we are all trying to drive day in and day out? And what I'm sharing might be very contextual to digital, maybe very contextual to fast-paced startups, maybe to IT services, tech product also to a certain extent. But in my experience, I've seen it also makes sense in retail and real estate also, right? So I think one is the business outcomes, right? So business through people, right? So that's a given. That's why HR continues to be in business. The second is this word, which is very powerful and used in an Indic context, called dharma, right? Now, dharma, if you see, is often understood as righteousness, sometimes misunderstood for religion, etc., etc. I am taking out the distilled meaning of practice dharma, which is called empathy. Right? So if I look at empathy and look at if I am adherent to empathy, then I can be fairly sure that I'm quite safe because I haven't gone poking people around, right, to expect a reaction from others, right? And hence, if I'm looking at operationalizing empathy, there is this word called care, which is also a very beautiful word. Right, there's another story, but I'm running out of time, so you can meet me offline. I'll tell you the story. But to put it very, very short, right? The story is about a doctor who's lost a patient. He goes to the monk who's been his mentor for a long time. And this is a real story, happened in Thailand. And the monk listens to him and says, no, don't quit your profession. Your problem is that you're trying to cure your patients. Your job is not to cure your patients, your job is to care for your patients. Right? That is a brilliant orbit shift, right? Thank you. And so if as HR we want to care for our people, so I think if they want instant gratification, it's good, give it, first give it, right? And I would say that AI and so on is very, very powerful if I'm able to work with the tech team to do 3 things. One is customization. A little more micro is personalization, and at the nano level, it's individualization. So if I can deliver this, right? People will no longer say HR gives peanuts, they will say HR is giving me cookies on my browser or laptop, whatever, because I exactly know what this person wants and needs. And once that agenda is done, I think I can start doing what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of harmonizing the entire workplace and so on. So I've tried to keep this very subtle, not actually be prescriptive, but just give a kind of a cue, a very meta level kind of a directioning in terms of what probably the industry is looking at, again context based. So I'll qualify that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think we'll all connect with you for some of those stories. But with the immense amount of digital footprint that people are now leaving and the amount of data that's getting collected both on people and on consumers, I think Siddharth was very right to say that, the need to customize, personalize and then individualize. I kind of really like that. And then while you are doing all that, do bring in that element of care. Otherwise, you will create personalization, individualization without care, may not mean anything for that individual. So, two great points, and we'll love to hear more stories from you, Siddharth. But less time, so we'll move on to Uday. And Uday, the question for you, and slightly complicated, linking two different subjects. One on D&I, and the other on, of course, on digitization. So what role does D&I, which is diversity, equity and inclusion, play in HR leadership during digital transformation? And how can HR leaders ensure that while these kind of transformation is happening, the priority on D&I is not lost or is leveraged very well to deliver the outcomes of the transformation? Uday.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I believe D, E and I is a hot topic for all of us, right? Right. So basically, I am from a technology company, so I am privileged that I work with many HR leaders whenever they have this D, E, I and the digital transformation journey. So normally, what we do is that whenever, the best thing according to me, what HR leaders can do with D, E and I is to operationalize it in the environment and create a high performance culture, right? So basically, let me just say that when we work with HR leaders, just sharing some perspective. So the first thing before we get into D, E and I, according to us, the HR leader needs to just understand the industry trends, like the benchmarking, what our peers are doing as far as DEI is concerned, what they have implemented, how they are getting benefited, and what will be able to our organization. So once we are clear on that, then it becomes easy, and then they can work with a technology leader like us to get that operationalized. And let me just share some of the perspective in each of the area. Now, when it comes to diversity, we have seen today that diversity doesn't mean only related to gender, right? It has got many lens. It can be diversity in terms of neuro, in terms of employee type, employee skills, etc., right? So what's the advantage of having a diversity? Anyone? Whenever we have a business problem, the best thing which can happen with the diverse team is we can get a different perspective. And I believe in L&T, when we have seen the case today, it is also proven that with the diverse team, we can get more or better innovative solutions and it becomes more profitable, right? So that's as far as diversity is concerned. Now, when it comes to equity and for HR leaders, many a times you will hear that employees are not engaged, they are dissatisfied, and most of the time the reason is that they feel that some other employees are getting more preference. They are getting better shifts, they are getting better overtime, they are getting better rest. If we are able to give them, our employee, a tool with which they can actually see that they are being given equal opportunity for working, do the overtime, to earn the shift premium, etc., it becomes
absolutely engaged and satisfied, right? So that's the equity part of it. And that actually leads to even the wage equity. Like, see, we have to consider all employee types, right? Whether it is white collar, blue collar, our contract employees. So if we are able to give wage equity even for our contract workforce, and if we are able to show them that, they are also being paid as per minimum wage or above, then that helps to give them more feeling of equity. And inclusion, I believe my colleague Ravi spoke about it, that more than D and E, it is always very, very impactful when employee knows that their voices are heard. They are being included when any business decisions are taken, right? Whether, let me give some of the examples. Like, let's say when the shift is ended, and if we are giving an opportunity for an employee to give quick feedback that how was the working environment, it becomes important for them. They feel that they are being included in and their voices are heard.
Uday,
Let's say,
thank you. I think
okay.
we've got just about 7 minutes.
Sure.
So sorry to interrupt. We'll come back to Guru.
Sure.
And Guru, how do you? So we'll try to keep it a bit of rapid fire or quick fire types this round. So how can HR leaders balance the need for automation and efficiency on one side, and the importance of maintaining a human touch and empathy? I think.
I think Sachin already spoke about it. Even all our panel members have spoken about it. But as I initially discussed, technology is as an enabler for the end result of people welfare or people outcomes, and it is not. It's only a means. So when you look at it as a means, we are not talking about, the human aspects eliminated because of technology. And when, very interesting, one example I will just, share it without getting into the empathy. We have a AI tool which connects with an employee 6 times a year when they join. When I wanted to also give you a perspective as to, I have 3.5% attrition per month. I have 30,000 employees in a company. That means every month I will have about 600 to 700 joiners. So you can imagine how the touch points and then what I am talking about. It's a BPO company. So in that context, we have implemented technology. 2019, my ENPS was -7. 2023 just received that positive 33. Year on year, we have moved -7 to 8 to 16.8 to 33. So that means without a human touch, this would have not happened. With 3 acquired entities, adding 4,000 employees into the system in the last 1 year. Okay. So what technology has helped? Technology produces a lot of insights. Instead of reactive MIS we used to produce in the past, you are getting real-time inputs, dashboards. One example I will take 30 seconds to complete. This is asking somebody what is your hobby, whom do you like, who is your film star, etc. The recently one HR business partner has taken those data and gone one step ahead in interacting with those people who have written Rajinikanth. Rajinikanth movie was coming. He sponsored tickets for them 1 week in advance. It's an HR job. How he was able to do that? Because somebody has put their interest in a database. So it is for us to use those databases for proactively connect with people, which can help. Otherwise, I would have never known that somebody is a Rajinikanth fan, right? So I wanted to just give a thought that technology will give us lot of leverage. Do we have the eye for details to extract that for human connect? I think that is where we need to look at it, sir.
Super example. We'll go to Sachin and Venkat and a joint question for you. How do HR leaders foster collaboration between HR and IT, the two functions, when you have to drive digital transformation? How do you align the two functions, bring them together?
Perfect. Quick one is that for me it's like a 2 in a box. whether it's a large HR transformation that we're doing, me and my CIO has to work together. He takes care of all the tech tough questions. I take care of all the experience and workflow conversations. Wherever is my weakness, he knows, he pitch in. Wherever is his weakness, I pitch in. It is impossible to have any one function like an HR running a large transformation or even a small intervention. So I think it's 50-50, 2 in a box. Now I'm thinking of bringing 3 in the box, bringing my the analytics COE and the Gen AI business unit to ensure that we start, whatever we're trying to create for our customers, we start creating for our internal members as well.
Wonderful. Venkat?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. First and foremost, I think what's important is what is HR and IT coming together for? What is the problem that we are solving? Okay, is it a problem that we are solving for our own functions, or are we solving it for the business? Or more importantly, the fourth dimension there is the employee for whom we are actually solving it. It's for the employee whom we are actually trying to solve it. If we get that representation of the one who is going to use it day in and day out, okay, and I articulate it right, IT brings the technology adequately, then we actually have a good model which is better adopted, okay, with that co-ownership from the beginning than pushing something through, for our individual or whatever those 90 days or 180 days outcomes.
Super, super good. Another joint question in the interest of time, and this is on data, and this is to Uday and to Sid. How do you actually leverage data for better employee experience, better talent management, workforce planning?
55 seconds. Okay.
Okay, I'll go. So I'll just answer it in bullet points because we have just last 1 minute left. So whenever we work with HR and operation, they have conflicting priorities many times, right? Operation wants to execute the production order or have the head count as per the customer SLA, etc., etc. And HR wants to ensure that their employees are treated equally and fairly. So how do we bridge the gap using the technology, right? So first and foremost, we should have a skill competency matrix available, that which employee has got which skill. Then comes the demand-based planning. So system or technology tool should be able to help with demand-based planning with lot of constraint given employee preference, their skills, their working ability, etc., considered, and then accordingly the manning should be done. And then HR and operation should have a real-time visibility. Technology tool should be able to help find the best replacement, and that's where we are saying that it will help not only with workflows planning, but since employees' preferences are considered, so they are also super motivated that yes, company is considering my voice, and that's where they remain engaged, and hence the talent is retained, as well as they attract the different talent also from other organizations.
Okay,
that's what
thank you, Uday. With the organizers' permission, I'll open it up for questions, and then if there's time, I'll try to summarize. But first, open it up to all of you. Any comments? Not just questions, comments, views are also welcome.
A comment in favor of Sachin's wonderful view of ChatGPT and other things not being human sensitive.
Got to be human sensitive.
That's a great statement we can make this.
Okay, if there are no questions, I think one takeaway from me definitely was let's be human first before being policy first, process first, or efficiency first. We're going through very interesting times. So as Spider-Man said, for HR folks, with great power comes great responsibility. So this is the time that the HR folks have a lot of power across looking at processes, businesses, operating models. We are indeed involved in deciding a lot of things. That brings a lot of responsibility to keep the human first. And yes, go ahead and explore different technologies. Also try to implement them, adopt them, and try them out. That's all I think from all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I would like to thank the moderator and the panelists over here for such a lovely session. I now request Mr. Yogesh Bari, Global HR and OD Leader, First Source, to do the honors by felicitating our moderator and panelists. I would request Mr. Yogesh Bari to felicitate our moderator, Mr. Sanchayan Paul, CHRO, Modenik Lifestyle Private Limited. I request Mr. Yogesh Bari to felicitate Dr. H.C. Guruvayurappan, PV, CHRO, Omega Healthcare. I request Mr. Yogesh to felicitate Mr. Uday Vora, Head, Solution Consulting India UKG. Next, I request Mr. Venkat Vishwanath, CHRO, Roche Products India, to be felicitated by Mr. Yogesh Bari. I request Mr. Yogesh Bari to felicitate Mr. Sachin Khurana, Chief People Officer and Vice President People Practice, Happiest Minds Technologies. I request all the panelists to kindly stay back on the dais. And last, but definitely not the least, I request Mr. Yogesh Bari to felicitate Dr. S. Naga Siddhartha, Chief Human Resources Officer, UrbanPiper.